My name is Caroline Poynton from Manchester, Bury. I am recording this today from YouTube because I'm not copyrighting YouTube. I'm paying attention. And this is pretty funny because I don't see where they can all disappear to. Well, what's being done? Are they being taken by freaking aliens?
The Home Office has no idea how many asylum seekers have gone missing.
Gone missing.
The Home Office has no data on a third of people who have claimed asylum in the last 3 years. That is tens of thousands of illegal immigrants who could have just vanished. But I think I know why they have. 1 in every 100 illegal immigrants in migrant hotels has been convicted of a crime, has been charged with a crime, or is wanted for a crime. So what do? Well, they just leg it, don't they? This is the reality. It won't just be well-meaning refugees from war-torn countries. Some of these people on the loose will be dangerous criminals. Some of them will have nothing to lose. 40% of failed asylum seekers are still living in Britain. Loads of them still being paid for by you, the taxpayer. So you've been told that you've been deported. And, what do? Are you just going to hang around and wait for your flight home? Or are you going to disappear as well? And it's still taking ages to decide applications. And people get to appeal those applications loads of times. The cost of supporting people seeking asylum was about £4.9 billion for the year just gone. Of that total, accommodation and support made up the biggest amount of £3.4 billion quid, of which hotels were £2.1 billion. Now, just think about this. You are waiting for your asylum claim to be processed. Now, you're not sure if you're going to be accepted. What do?
Think about this.
Start a family. This Palestinian man came on a tourist visa 2 years ago, then claimed asylum. He's met a lovely English woman, and now they're having a child together. Now, I'm sure this is a genuine relationship, but it begs the question, how easy do we make it for people to set roots down in Britain and make it almost impossible for us to deport them? We've got so many illegals that we're running out of hotels. So now they're going to be put in disused army barracks. Well, the locals aren't happy.
Oh, I bet they didn't take her kid off her social services, did they? Penal services.
Today, the people of Crowborough in East Sussex have applied for a judicial review to prevent 600 male asylum seekers being dumped in their town, without proper planning permission, public consultation, or safety considerations. And they are right to be worried, because just to bring us full circle, how many of those migrants at that army barracks are just going to go missing? What's the Prime Minister going to do about it, though? Oh, he's going to urge European leaders to change the ECHR to make it easier to deport people. Look, give me a break. Sir Keir Starmer and his great friend, our Attorney General, have spent their entire careers practically making love to the ECHR. Here's Lord Hermer.
Now, I'm proud to say that since taking office, this new United Kingdom government has taken steps to uphold our obligations and the international rules-based system. The new United Kingdom government will never withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights or refuse to comply with judgments of the court.
Right, well, there you go. So that's that then, isn't it, really? This is all just 1 day's worth of news. I mean, I've just told you that was all just today's news. Just ridiculous, isn't it? Just utter migrant mayhem in the asylum seeker republic of Great Britain.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is private internet access. Digitally today.
God.
Third of asylum seekers are.
Oh, dear me, none of them want to do anything.
I mean, the entire system is a disaster from top to toe, from soup to nuts, isn't it? I mean, everything is wrong with it. All of this talk about, well, let's try and interpret Articles 3 and 8 of the European Convention slightly differently. That is using a scalpel on the system, whereas what we need is a bazooka. Every single element of it's wrong. The legal protections are ridiculous and have been stretched beyond credibility. The ability to disappear into the system, effectively into the black market economy, or God knows where else, as you've just pointed out, Patrick, is high. Our ability to actually find people and remove them quickly is nearly zero. The length of time for processing a claim is ridiculous, 18 months on average, and then potentially further appeals. The whole lot is broken. It needs to be reset entirely from scratch, not nuanced through some new legal interpretation of some part of the Human Rights Act. So the law's got to be stricter. The burden of proof has to sit with the asylum seeker. There needs to be a time limit on how long they've got to put forward their claim. And if it fails, there needs to be very swift removal. None of that is happening. So all of this is going to get worse.
Yeah, and it's not a mystery as to why so many of them are absconding. When you look at that data from a while ago that was compiled by a detailed report in the Sun newspaper, that 1 out of every 100 asylum seekers in migrant hotels have either committed a crime or wanted for a crime or have been charged with a crime, it's understandable about why so many of them just leg it, isn't it?
Bullshit.
Yeah, and we trust them. We trust them to act with goodwill. They can come in and out of the hotels whenever they want, and then when they have failed claims, they can just disappear into society. And they say, "Oh, please check in and tell the Home Office where you are, else you won't get your benefits." But they can get some job in the black market. So what happens with many people is their asylum claims are rejected, but then they just disappear. And the Home Office hope that one day they'll just turn up with goodwill at the deportation centre, and they never do. And what's really worrying is that you've got also from RAF Wethersfield, you showed the list, Patrick, on your show, of that huge list of people who have disappeared, some of which had supposedly tested positive for tuberculosis, who are now out in society spreading that everywhere. That could be the next COVID, let's see. And it's really, really concerning. And I just think if we're going to have people coming in this country illegally, at least keep them detained until if and when their asylum claim is approved. You should have to stay in that hotel and not leave to be able to go out, commit crimes, potentially sexually assault women, whilst you're waiting to be assessed.
Well, this is it. They've got nothing to lose, these people. Once you've dropped off the radar, probably, in my view, because you've either been rejected for asylum or you're wanted for a crime, you have absolutely nothing to lose. And just think about this, all of the hoo-ha, rightly so, that's made of, prisoners being mistakenly released recently, and David Lammy copping it for that, fair enough, that's a disgrace. But the numbers here, that is tens of thousands of people that we have no idea where they are. That is a national emergency, Nina, isn't it?
Well, it is. I completely agree with you. But you can't just blame the Labour government, because we're talking about what happened under the Tories as well. And the system that we have now is what was set up by the Conservative government, the hotel system, which this government is trying to get away from. I subscribe to the Lib Dem view, which is just to state that it's an emergency, to double the number of caseworkers to 4,000, to build Nightingale-style, processing places, and then within, if they're not processed within 3 months, fine, I can give them a right to work. Well, absolutely, why not? And I would like to point out to you that you said 1 in 100, so that's 1% are criminals, and that's dreadful. But then there are the others who are not.
Well, that was just the people in asylum hotels. Also, so 40% of people that we have refused asylum to are still in Britain.
Yeah.
And we're paying for that.
Well, or they've disappeared into the black market or grey market economy or doing God knows
But
what.
just think about that, because of the numbers where people say something like 70% of asylum seekers get approved, we know that only 3.5% of small boat migrants have ever been deported, right? So of the, you've got 70% of them are being approved, and then of the people that have been rejected, 40% of them are still here anyway.
Yeah, we think it's worse than that, but our understanding of that stat is they asked 5,000 people who have made a claim within the past 3 years what has happened, and some of those people have responded saying my claim was approved and I'm still here. So 40% of just 5,000 people who have made claims have had their claims rejected and have been able to say the actual, if you just look at people who have been rejected, it's a tiny percentage that actually get deported. I believe it's around 10% according to the Migration Observatory of people who have their asylum claims rejected actually get kicked out. So we can speed up the processing, right? We can hire more caseworkers, but that's only useful if then the people that we reject, we can actually kick out.
To your point, Patrick, on the numbers, once you put all these percentages together, these people are acting rationally, right? They're looking at the system and they're saying to themselves, what's the chance that my application will be accepted? Pretty high. Supposing it's refused, what's my chance of appeal? Pretty good. Supposing I lose appeals, what's my chances of just disappearing into the black market of the UK economy? So the odds look great if you're considering coming over here through an illegal route as an asylum seeker. And until you change those odds and people realise actually my chances are slim, my chances are poor.
And we can't even manage to send 50 people
nothing
to a week.
Firstly, if they've disappeared into the black economy and they're working, these are people who want to work, so they're happy to work. Well, they
want to
they
work,
are.
they
They're
don't.
working. More of them are working than Excuse me. You've had your chance. The millions of young people who are not working, they were sitting in their rooms. These people have got off their bottoms and they've got here. Okay. I'd also like to point out that when you're returning people, there are several things, and you have to know where to return them to. So if they've dumped their papers, where do you put them? Secondly, you have to have a country that will agree to take them back. And although we have agreements with some countries, that doesn't always work in practice.
The rest of Europe seems to be able to deal with this an awful lot better than we do.
I don't think they are. And
Well, certainly in terms of numbers,
they also take a lot more people than we do.
I think one of the things about this for me is just how cavalier this government and the previous government are with our safety, all of our safety, but especially the safety of women and girls. If you've got this volume of people on the run, absconding with nothing to lose, how can you sleep at night knowing that they are out there? I find that utterly astonishing. The other big news today was that in East Sussex at Crowborough, which is where one of these new asylum detention centres, I don't think they're not actually even going to be detained, it's just a holding pen.
Hang out there.
It's a hangout, it's a chill zone.
Yeah.
So, a new asylum seeker village, right, which was a former army base. They've had to kick the cadets out in order to import all these fighting age males. There is an irony there, of course. Now the local people have actually said, well, we don't want that. Judicial review time. And they are saying that they've not done planning permission for this, they've not done a risk assessment, they've not even actually factored in that apparently there is some protected woodland nearby. I mean, honestly, next they're going to be saying that there's a rare breed of newts that needs to be use it, throw the newts in. But you know, this is where we're at, though, isn't it?
This is where we're at, and I can understand the local fury of these people, that they are looking at it. They know the system is completely out of control, and in certain local areas like this one, you're going to bear the brunt of it. They have no faith in the system, so as you rightly say, these people are not going to be detained. They're just going to have a place.
But you all agree that it's a disaster. So what, in practical terms, do you do? They are here. I've just said where to.
Look at what Donald Trump said when that National Guard member was shot by an Afghan. He immediately said, right, that's it, no more migrants from Afghanistan. When we see rape after rape after rape in the news, we've just had that news of two Afghan teenagers raping a 15-year-old girl in Leamington Spa. Why isn't there a huge outcry from a politician saying that's it? There is clearly a huge issue with the culture, with men coming from Afghanistan. That's it. We can have women and children from Afghanistan, but not a single. Why are we acting like that?
Nina's laid down a fair gauntlet here. What is the solution? And I would say the solution is you leave the ECHR, you repeal the Human Rights Act, you make it plain that the burden of proof that you really are a person fleeing persecution is on the asylum seeker, not on the government to disprove it. And you start to get very swift on that process. You do it in days, not in years. And you find some imaginative solutions. Might not be Rwanda, could be Ascension Island.
It's going to be somewhere else. There are actually
build a fucking jail there.
So they're trying. They're trying.
Human rights lawyer as Prime Minister, he's never going to do it. He's never going to leave the ECHR. He's never going to
the ECHR. May I see if we leave the ECHR? A, it's going to take ages. B, Europe will not deal with it. And 3, what about the Good Friday Agreement in Ireland? You cannot transgress that.
Okay, all right. Sounds especially like the illegal migrant they brought on Question Time a week or so ago there, Nina, Northern Ireland Protocol.
But it's true.
It's not true. They've had a way with it. There's lots of ways.
Ireland is a tinderbox still.
Just look at the headline to you now. This is a headline because this is a case of every flipping day. Right? Afghan asylum seeker charted his journey across Europe, posing in TikTok videos, clad in designer gear and a gold watch, before arriving in the UK where he raped a 15-year-old schoolgirl. An article from earlier today in the Daily Mail. This is
Grim reading. Yeah.
It's grim reading, but it's happening. There's been a spike in this. It's happening. The reports of this are intensifying. When are we going to say enough?
It's horrific. But the thing is, the more we concentrate on these cases, and they are dreadful, they are a drop in the ocean compared to what's happening up and down this country, within homes, everywhere. Women and young girls are being raped by people they know, and these rape cases only 3% of them ever come to court.
We don't need to add to it.
I know we don't need to add to it, but the thing is, when we concentrate on these other ones, we are actually negating.
You get tougher on crime across the board.
On this point, I'm sorry, just one point. On this point of Turkey Istanbul, and now talking about how wants to reform the ECHR. People like Turkey Istanbul and Lord Hermer have kind of metaphorically made passionate love to the ECHR for their entire professional careers. They've taken the ECHR out to dinner. They've bought the ECHR a nice bottle of red wine. They've done all of this stuff with the ECHR. They've gone down on bended knee in front of it and begged it for marriage. And now they're saying, actually, we want to reform it. Do we trust them?
No, I mean, I think that they're just sort of tinkering at the edges. What we've heard today from them and from the Council of Europe is essentially saying maybe a few people who are convicted criminals already.
No, we don't like someone to say it's a drop in the ocean.
That will change, but at no point are they going to say scrap the ECHR. All illegal migrants can't stay. No chance.
They're not staying. They're not asking for that. They're trying to change it.
Yeah, I'm just saying a lot of people are getting very excited about this and thinking, well, who are the ECHRs going to?
Well, they're going in the right direction, aren't they?
Baby steps. Baby steps.
You need a bazooka, not a scalpel.
I think what could have been done all those years ago had people like Turkey Istanbul and Lord Hermer not said that it would basically be akin to Nazism if we dared to change the ECHR. Just think where we would be now. That was all one day's worth of Migrant Mayhem news, by the way, everybody. So, we wait with bated breath for tomorrow, don't we?
Don't give a fuck what they think, as long as they're going to stop trying. If my little girl could be nice, we know when they're going to try and stop these people. To be honest with myself, but they won't do fuck all this country or Europe. They've got nothing they're going to do. It's all a fucking joke.
On the 29th of July 2024, 17-year-old Axel Rudakabana walked into a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport with a knife.
Yeah, all set up again.
On the 29th of July 2024, 17-year-old Axel Rudakabana walked into a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport with a knife. He stabbed 3 young girls to death and injured 10 others.
Sent back to the land of his fucking parents.
Amid swirling online misinformation that the killer was a Muslim asylum seeker, Southport sparked the worst anti-migrant riots Britain has seen in modern times. It's also sparked a crackdown on speech on those accused of spreading hate or encouraging violence online amid the carnage. On top of rightly punishing the rioters or those who explicitly incited violence, the authorities also went after those who simply aired their views on social media. Jamie Michael, a former Royal Marine and now massage therapist from the Welsh Valleys, was one of the few Southport speech criminals who pleaded not guilty.
It took a jury of his peers just 17 minutes to acquit him.
But it all still came at a tremendous cost for Michael and his family. We went to South Wales to find out more.
Hi, Tom Ryan's White Knight. Good to meet you.
Shall we talk a bit about your background and your life story, because I think it's useful for people to know the kind of person behind the story a little bit.
I was a really good sportsman in lots of different sports. I was really, really good at football. I signed for Manchester United, did schoolboy forms for 2 years, didn't end up making it with them, and then I went on to sign for Oxford United. I was with them for about 18 months before transferring to Cardiff. Because I'd had a lot of disappointments in the football, I just wanted a complete change, so I was literally walking past the careers office one day and spur of the moment walked in. Before you knew it, I was in Royal Marines doing the training. I went over to Iraq.
You were there during the initial invasion?
Baghdad was starting to get bombed, and then we just followed in. We were fighting against the Iraqi army then. It wasn't all the kind of guerrilla warfare that followed. I'd say every probably 2 to 3 days you end up being in a firefight. Before that, you obviously just shoot at targets, but then you're shooting at people. I think I suffered a bit of post-traumatic stress afterwards.
Is that part of the angle with the way you've been treated over the course of last summer? You know, you've done all the right things in life, you're a veteran as well, to be treated so poorly by the British state after all that?
I was willing to put my life down on the line for this country on many occasions, and then for making a video trying to get some safety in place for our children, then I was punished so heavily. And that same government that sent us to war was then sending me to prison for trying to protect children. So that really hurt. And yeah, it was crap.
We should talk about the Facebook post with the video that you put up. 2 days after the Southport massacre, Jamie recorded a 12-minute video and uploaded it to Facebook.
Oh yeah, I remember
it was
it.
raw, angry, and by his own admission, clumsily expressed. He wrongly said that the killer, Rudy Cabana, was not born in Cardiff. He inveighed against out-of-control migration and the, quote, scumbags that are coming in, unquote. But he explicitly disavowed violence and called for public meetings about safety.
With the current situation, I would say that we need security on schools now at the moment.
I talked about my fears of illegal immigration. We're hearing there's a lot of them are coming here that are criminals.
More and more these people come and they get spread amongst our communities.
So I called on the police, I called on the councillors, I called on the MPs to do something about it.
I'm talking about doing things the right way. Getting in big groups, having meetings, and going to the council, going to the police, and going to the politicians.
You're very specifically talking about illegal migrants.
I got no issues at all with migrants sort of thing, but it's the illegal ones that are coming here. Yeah, that's my concern.
Tell me about the arrest. Just kind of walk me through it.
I had a phone call and my girlfriend said the police have been here and they're looking for you. She had told them where I work. And they were standing down the bottom of the car park. I asked them, was everything okay?
Okay, well.
I activated my camera. I walked down the steps towards him and I said, look, I'm just filming for my own safety and evidence. And then he went on to tell me that I was being arrested.
The time is 12:55 and I'm arresting you on suspicion of indecent racial hatred.
Which isn't actually a crime as far as I can tell as well, so
yeah,
the police don't always know the law in this.
Yeah, it wasn't even the right charge.
What is the racial thing? I need to know the racial...
I've given you the circumstances, right? We'll get to the bottom of it in custody, alright?
In custody?
Yeah.
For how long?
You won't be for long, right? Be an interview,
okay.
But you become with us for that reason, alright? So you have to speak to your phone and we get going straight away. Right.
Hang on. You'll have it.
As soon as I got to the front desk in the police station, they told me it was a maximum charge of 7 years. It was like 7 years. I was just in disbelief, so I asked for a duty solicitor, and the duty solicitor was telling me that they're trying to take parts of my video, make out that they're causing racial hatred. And I was asking him which parts, and he was saying he couldn't really tell me because the video that was uploaded to this portal for the evidence, it wasn't working, it was buffering. I was a bit like, well, surely you have to see the video. And he was telling me that, no, he couldn't see the video.
And did you have a client here when the police showed up?
I was just doing a bit of sponsorship for him because he had a fight coming up. He's actually the bare knuckle boxing champion of the world. So if I wanted to kick something off, I was the right guy.
So there were the 3 days in police custody, and then subsequent to that was also 17 days. You also
following I got remanded then in the courts because the judge said that I was likely to cause further incidents or whatever. My solicitor was saying, look, if you go guilty, you can have a third off straight away. And I said, I'm not going guilty. I said, I haven't done nothing wrong. When I was in jail, it is what it is. It's not a very nice place. I've been in the military, you live in them kind of conditions, the bare minimum in there.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't really a problem. But it was my biggest struggle was thinking about my little girl. My little girl's autistic. I ended up having to sing happy birthday down the phone. And she didn't understand because we were just on a normal telephone. She was trying to show me all her toys and I just had to pretend that I was, that's great. And, and that was making me really kind of choke up. Again, that made me feel guilty that I was in there,
The prosecution kept him in prison for 17 days, which is a very long time to be held on remand in custody. It's far longer than most people would expect to remain in custody.
I got released from bail on tag. They released me on tag with a curfew, and the Free Speech Union had already been contacted me because they got on my Facebook. And at my first meeting with them, they literally couldn't believe that I had a tag on. They said, tag for an online offence. They were shaking their heads, so they got that tag off me within a week. They were brilliant.
I understand that the Free Speech Union felt you had a very strong case, but I imagine that's quite hard to believe fully.
I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong, so I thought if this goes to a jury, then they're going to see it for themselves, and they did in the end.
Yeah. It's only because the prosecution decided to infer negatively about everything that Jamie said that he found himself in the courtroom to begin with. Jamie and I went through line by line. He was able to very clearly explain and express precisely what he meant, which had nothing to do with stirring up hatred. It had to do with being extremely worried about his family, about his community, and about the threat that certain individuals pose.
I honestly think if I had the Free Speech Union at the police station, I think I would have walked up that police station. The duty solicitors didn't talk about my free speech rights at all. He was actually saying, look, if you'd said this a couple of months ago, you'd probably have been alright, but it's different now. And I said to him, what do you mean? I said, the laws haven't changed. I said, we just had a new government, and he's gone like that. And I thought,
oh. And one thing that came out during the course of the case was who had originally made the complaint in the first place. During Jamie's trial, it emerged that someone working for Buffy Williams, a Labour member of the Welsh Parliament or Senedd, was the one who had reported him to the police. When you found that out, did that just make it feel like even more sinister that it was basically a politician?
She was responsible for reporting all 3 of the boys around here. It wasn't just myself. They got given 3 years, but they took a year off for going guilty at the first plea. They tried to make an example of us at the time. To shut the conversation up on, in my opinion, to shut the conversation up on illegal migration.
Yeah. South Wales Police told us a comprehensive investigation into this matter was carried out, stressing it is committed to ensuring that all investigations are conducted with integrity and transparency to keep our communities safe. The Crown Prosecution Service insisted it is not an offence to have strong political views, but we will consider all cases handed to us by police where it is viewed conduct may have strayed into criminality. We do this independently of police and government. We respect the jury's decision. Buffy Williams, the Labour member of the Welsh Parliament for Rhondda, had this to say. Senedd Security strongly advises all politicians to report any posts that specifically mention politicians and could be interpreted as threatening. This case has been handled no differently from any other brought to my office.
What we saw in the aftermath of Southport was a political class who used the law to send a message. We will use the law to show you what the proper response to this is.
You were in jail for 17 days. It takes a jury 17 minutes to acquit you.
I came outside, grabbed a coffee, and I was speaking to my solicitors, asking him how long do these things usually take. He was explaining to me what a hanging court is, if there's split decisions and all that, and it could go on for days and days. And next thing we got called in, I hadn't drunk my cup of tea.
I think the jury, in Jamie's case, they did the equivalent of throwing the book back at the prosecution, acquitting him in 17 minutes. The same number of minutes as days that he spent on remand in custody.
The judge said, it's got to be quiet and all that, and when they said not guilty, all that, we all bloody, everyone behind me shouted, yes! I just remember just going, I just think, I don't have to wake up every morning or thinking, what if this, what if that, and I was so lucky because I had the whole community back me as well. I don't really feel let down by our government, big time. But I've had a lot of support around here, not just locally, around the country as well.
Had Jamie Michael been successfully prosecuted, you would have basically been telling a huge portion of the British public that their opinion was tantamount to a criminal offence.
In today's true crime video, we will cover the brutal rise of the Cheetham Hill Gang, also known as the Hillbillies. Our episodes sometimes contain scenes of violence and strong strong language. If you find such material distressing, this may not be the right video for you. Today's true crime story starts in the car park of the Penny Black pub back in 1991, on a cold February night that would end the life of a young gangster who had become a genuine menace to the community of Cheetham Hill and beyond. Anthony Johnson, known on the streets as White Tony, was ambushed and killed in a brutal execution that remains officially unsolved to this day. His death came as a result of a bitter dispute with the notorious Noonan crime family, and the manner in which he was killed sent shockwaves through Manchester's criminal underworld. The ambush began in the dark car park of the Penny Black, a pub that was part owned by Derek Noonan himself. White Tony was with his close associate Tony McKee, a man everyone called Black Tony. Tony. And the two of them were driving around in a white Ford Cosworth when they were flagged down by two men in another vehicle. As they tried to leave the car park, a taxi suddenly appeared and blocked them in from behind, cutting off any chance of escape. The driver of that taxi was believed to be Paul Flannery, who immediately opened fire and shot Black Tony. Within seconds, three of the Noonan brothers joined the attack. Desmond, Derek, and Damien Noonan, along with another man named Michael Sharples, all piled in. White Tony took some hits but managed to get out of the car and started running, trying to vault over a wall to get away before he was shot in the back. A voice shouted out to finish him off, and two more shots rang out. One of those final bullets went into his mouth. He was just 22 years old when he died in that car park. The execution of White Tony marked the end of an era for the Cheetham Hill gang. But to understand how his murder became almost inevitable, we need to go back 2 decades to a time when North Manchester's criminal landscape looked very different from what it would become. In the late 1960s and throughout the 1970s, Manchester's underworld was dominated by older, well-connected criminals who had established themselves over many years. One group that loomed large in the imagination of both police officers and local people was the Quality Street Gang, a loose circle of sharply dressed men who supposedly took their name from a chocolate advertisement that was popular on the television at the time. The story goes that one day these lads walked into a boozer somewhere in town, all suited and booted, looking like proper businessmen, and someone at the bar shouted out that here comes the Quality Street Gang because they reminded him of the fancy people in those chocolate adverts. The name stuck, and soon everyone was talking about them in hushed tones. Some senior officers at Greater Manchester Police were absolutely convinced that the Quality Street Gang was behind most of the major crime happening in the city during that entire period. They believed these men were organising armed robberies, running protection rackets, and controlling significant portions of the local economy through fear and intimidation. Yet here is where things get strange. Because in more than 30 years of police attention, not a single person identified as a core member of the Quality Street Gang was ever arrested or convicted of any serious crime. This remarkable fact led many people to wonder whether the gang was ever really an organised crime outfit at all, or whether it was more of an urban legend that grew arms and legs over time, feeding on rumour and reputation rather than any documented criminal activity. There is one story about the Quality Street Gang that has become almost mythical in Manchester. According to local legend, the Cray twins came up from London to Manchester Piccadilly station at some point in the 1960s, looking to expand their criminal empire into the north of England. The tale goes that whatever conversation took place on that platform was enough to convince Ronnie and Reggie Cray to get back on a train to London the very next day and never bother Manchester again. Whether this actually happened, or whether it is just one of those stories that people like to believe is impossible to verify, but it tells you something about the reputation these men had, that anyone would even think such a thing was possible. What we do know is that the Quality Street crowd moved in some interesting circles. There was a hotel in Whalley Range called the Clifton Grange, run by a woman named Philomena Linnott, and this became a proper meeting spot where alleged gang members would rub shoulders with showbiz types and sports stars, including George Best, who was at the height of his fame playing for Manchester United at the time. Philomena's son was Phil Lynott, the frontman of Thin Lizzy, and the band got friendly with this whole crowd. Some people reckon that the famous track The Boys Are Back in Town was actually written about the Quality Street gang, and there is another Thin Lizzy song called Johnny the Fox Meets Jimmy the Weed that is believed to reference a fellow named Jimmy Donnelly, who was associated with the gang for years and went by the nickname Jimmy the Weed. He would later appear at various peace meetings between Manchester gangs, showing that his influence extended well beyond the Quality Street days. The crew's reputation got dragged into the public spotlight in 1986 when John Stalker, who was the Deputy Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police at the time, got suspended over allegations that he had been attending social events where members of the gang were knocking about. Stalker was eventually cleared of any wrongdoing, but the whole affair showed just how much the name Quality Street Gang could make people nervous, even if nobody could quite prove what they had actually done. If you are still with us at this point, you are about to discover how...
Right. Okay.
So I wanted to show you this segment on GB News, where in a moment... of clarity, a woman named Lucy White pointed out an issue that nobody, including those in the right-wing media, ever want to touch. An issue that is extremely underreported and considered very taboo. Take a listen.
Will you leave Labour into the next general election?
I honestly hope so, because the backups are even worse then. But what I would say on Keir Starmer's interview just then is, he has the audacity to call Sarah Poynton racist for her comments, and yet Keir Starmer is not addressing the fact that there's huge anti-white racism in our country. You know, if you look at the 1991 population census, the UK was 94% white, and 30 years on, 2021, it's 74% white. So, you know, in 30 years, the portion of the white population has decreased by 20%, and yet Keir Starmer continues with his uncontrolled borders and mass migration, and in fact, he is not addressing anti-white racism.
But I guess, look, I see what you mean. London is now a white British minority city. I think white Brits in London are something like 35%. But how is that, by definition, racist? It's a very silly immigration policy, if you ask me, because you're losing the identity of the country. But how's that? You think it's deliberate racism?
Yeah, and it's DEI policies. So if you look at Parliament or many other organisations across government, they will only promote certain internships if you come from a certain background. And what the problem with that is that's particularly white working class young boys and girls finishing university, they're excluded from those opportunities because of their skin colour. So that is completely anti-white racism.
So there you go, you may not have caught it immediately. The issue is not about DEI or talking about anti-white racism, these kind of things, because this is a discussion that has been had across British politics for a while now. The discussion that is never actually really had, and she kind of touched on it, she didn't go in depth into it, she kind of touched on it, is the radical shrinking of the white population in this country at the hands largely of mass migration. And no one ever talks about this really, because it's considered absolutely 100% taboo to point out the fact that white people are seemingly being replaced. I think there's a little bit more nuance to it than that, but that's kind of what it looks like. The bringing up anti-white racism is still important in this context, and the fact that Keir Starmer's not addressing it, because Keir Starmer fundamentally agrees, and it is the anti-white racism that contributes in part to the effective depopulation of white people in this country. Because there has been a push, especially within the Labour Party, but just generally on the left, to demonise white people, to make them feel guilty, ashamed, and depressed. This happens across the West. And I could do a whole long video, like a long video explaining to you exactly how it is that the authorities constantly are trying to encourage white people to be ashamed of themselves, to feel guilty for their existence, to feel depressed about their horrible history, and basically convince them to stop existing as a race. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting in this video, to be clear, that white people are superior or inferior to other races. I don't really think race actually matters, but the people who are pushing this on white people think race matters. And they think that race matters in the sense that white people are uniquely evil, which is why, for example, abortion gets pushed heavily on white people. The whole, you can change from boy to girl or girl to boy thing. That is something that is pushed heavily on white people. The climate change panic that has convinced a whole bunch of white people, more than you'd even believe, that they cannot have children because otherwise they will deplete the world's resources and we will all die. The claims about the history of colonialism and this kind of made-up narrative that everywhere else in the world was full of really nice and kind people and the white people came along with their weapons and killed them all, and that this is evidence of the unique intrinsic evil of white people. And so therefore, if they're intrinsically evil, they shouldn't really be reproducing, should they? Even goes as deep as just in advertisements. We see this now, like mixed race couples are in virtually every single advertisement. There's a reason for that. Right, all of it is designed to basically convince white people to stop reproducing. If they do decide to reproduce with people of other races, specifically so that you don't produce white people. I'm not saying that you cannot race mix, that's somehow wrong. It's not wrong, but it should come from a natural place. The problem that we're seeing is there's being active propaganda pushed from the top to try and sell you on the idea that, for example, mixed race couples are basically the only couples in existence, when in reality they're quite a small minority of couples. And the reason they're pushing it on you is, again, because they don't want white people to exist. And it's reflected in the numbers, in the shrinking of the population of white people. There have been so many incentives pushed, again, not exclusively on white people, because, for example, abortions and birth control, things like this is all stuff that climate change, panic to a degree, all of it has been pushed on people who are not white as well, but it's targeted mainly at white people. And it has led to what we see not just in the United Kingdom, but across the West, which is a declining birth rate, especially among white people. And then what happens, of course, is that all the politicians will then use this, right? After they basically convinced you through a million different means to never reproduce, they destabilize your economy such that it is very difficult for you to afford to have children. What then happens, right? The white population declines, and then what do people say? What do the establishment say is the solution? Well, of course, they tell you the solution that Keir Starmer and people at the Labour Party and all the rest are pushing, is the solution is mass migration. But the reality is that these migrants are coming here to replace you. I'm not sure if the basis of whether or not they're coming here to replace you is based on skin colour. I don't know that the Labour Party are necessarily saying white people out, ethnic minorities in. But what I'm almost certain of, dissident Brits, people who don't vote for the establishment, people who go against the narrative, people who vote for Reform UK out, migrants in, because migrants are more likely to come to this country and vote for the Labour Party because the Labour Party promises them basically a free, cushy life on taxpayer money. That's a large part of this is aimed at voting bases. They're trying to mould white people into this kind of monolith of like the typical like left-wing liberal. They're giving you a million incentives as white people to never ever actually reproduce. And if you do reproduce, they tell you that it is your solemn duty to raise children to believe that they are racist and they are evil and that they, from birth, owe ethnic minorities some kind of a handout, or they owe them some form of remedy for past ills done by other whites. Because what the establishment is seeing right now, especially, is the populist uprising in this country. A lot of the people in that movement of Reform UK, not all, but a lot, are white people. And I think they view it as white people are the most likely to rebel against them, to rebel against the establishment, to rebel against the common narratives, to rebel against the trajectory of this country. Again, not all white people. Some of the most vehement defenders of the destruction of this nation are also white people. But they understand that if they import a bunch of ethnic minorities, especially from the third world to this country, as long as they promise to give them free benefits, free life, free everything, these people will continue to vote for the Labour Party. They won't even think about Labour Party policy, they won't think about the trajectory of this country, because a lot of them aren't really from this country and they can leave. The Labour Party will say, well, look, we're going to give you loads of benefits, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that, and then just kind of a silent quid pro quo that is expected that you vote for them. White people are not exactly like that. White people are a lot more likely to join the kind of right-wing populist movement. The movement to take back control from Westminster and give it in the hands of the people, which is exactly what people like Keir Starmer are seeking to avoid. And this has been a concern for people, I think, in the establishment for a long, long time now, is that, we can't implement our agenda of kind of globalist, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist multiculturalism. We can't implement this poisonous, dangerous, destructive ideology on the United Kingdom when you have too many white people around, because white people will resist this, because they just seem to be the most likely group to do so. And so this is why they have encouraged you through various means to stop reproducing, so that they can then bring in a bunch of migrants and use your lack of reproduction as a justification to do so, And then these migrants, once they've naturalised them as citizens, which they'll do in about 5 years' time, this whole talk from the Labour Party about, we're going to make it so that it's 20 years. Yeah, okay. I'll believe it when I see it. The whole point of that is to kind of replace you, to drown you out. Because the white people who are already voting left-wing, they'll continue to vote left-wing. But they'll now be joined with an army of foreigners who are also going to vote left-wing. And so your voice, whatever's left of you, dissident right-wingers, they've already managed to convince you that abortion is okay. And again, I'm not going to go into a long, detailed discussion about it. So the reality is that many people, even on the right wing, many people who vote for reform are going out and aborting their children. They even can convince some of you to kind of push the narrative that, you know, jumping from boy to girl or girl to boy is okay, so long as you don't use the wrong bathrooms. They somehow managed to convince many people on the right wing that this is the position they should take, as opposed to just denying the whole ideology outright. Although that impact is waning. They destabilize the economy such that they make it difficult for you to afford to have children. They've done all of these things to convince you to stop reproducing. And this is why you see that the white population has dropped from 94% to 74%. And is going to continue to drop. In fact, research from McGoodwin predicts that white people will be a minority in this country by 2063. And that by 2100, they'll be basically a third of the population. And I think we have to stand up against this kind of uncontrolled migration that is designed to rig the game in favor of the Labour Party, that is designed to malign and convince white people that their existence is an intrinsic evil. I think we have to start fighting back against this. We have to start fighting back against, for example, one of the main narratives that you'll hear, which is that the reason why we have to allow mass migration, especially from the third world, is because white people are the cause of all ills in the third world. The third world was an amazing place up until Whitey got involved. Absolute lie, and we should dispel of that nonsense. We don't owe these people, in many cases, a place in this country because we didn't cause the destruction of their countries.
No, the cause their own.
What we've allowed to happen again in this country is to be convinced of the idea that the destruction of many countries, in, for example, the third world, is not a result of their own agency, but it's a result of us. We are the puppet masters of the entire world. That's all a bunch of rubbish. And we also have to think about the future if white people are to become a minority in this country. Again, I'm not suggesting that there's an inferiority or superiority based on race, but what I am suggesting is that you see even now, while people who are not white are still the minority in this country, you see even now how many white people are being treated by some of the minorities. Again, not all, but some of the minorities. They call you racist. You are intrinsically racist. You're a white supremacist if you disagree on mass migration.
Yeah.
They malign you and say that you are the cause of most of the evil, not just in this country, but in the entire world. They take opportunities from you actively. You heard about the DEI. They actively claim that because of your intrinsic evil, your intrinsic racism, that you now have to actively seek to prefer non-white candidates at jobs, for example, to white candidates, especially in higher paying jobs, because otherwise this is proof of your evil. And they've done this under the guise of tackling white supremacy and of providing equity. They've proven time and time again that fundamentally they just hate white people. And imagine what they would do if they had more power. If you give people like this, and again, I'm not saying you can't give minorities power because they're going to oppress you, because that's not necessarily true. What I'm saying is if you allow a group of minorities who genuinely believe that your skin color makes you racist, makes you evil, which they do believe, if you allow them to run your country, you're in deep, deep trouble here. Bringing minorities into this country, putting them in positions of power, people who fundamentally believe that this country is a horrible place filled with horrible human beings, the whole thing is evil, it needs tearing down. And the thing is that if you don't believe me, you can ask many of these migrants, by the way. Many of them will tell you, in their more honest moments, that the reason why this country deserves and should have mass migration is not because it's actually a benefit to you, because it's not. It's because you deserve it for all the evil you've done. It's your comeuppance. And when you allow people who genuinely see one of their missions in life to be revenge on white people, you put them in positions of power and you make white people a minority, I think you can see where that's going to go. Allowing hostile racialists of any race to rule you will be a nightmare for your population. I mean, we can't allow, for example, Keir Starmer to be running around doing victory laps because he managed to bring net migration down to a mere 204,000 people, especially when the damage has already been done by the Labour Party, especially when he's allowing more asylum seekers in than ever before. Especially when you consider the fact that, let's be real about this, by next year that number will almost certainly have gone up again. And so I think what we have to do is start associating the issue of mass migration to the issue of this kind of white depopulation bomb that we're seeing in this country. And some of it is actually happening naturally. So it's not just exclusively the fault of external powers trying to convince you to not reproduce and to depopulate yourselves. A lot of it is down to your own decision making at the end of the day. A lot of white people should be reproducing a lot more, and they're not. I'm not suggesting that by the time you're 20, you should have 5 kids or something.
Good evening, I hope everyone's okay today. Thank you for watching as always. If you like this video, consider liking and subscribing. It does help the channel out a lot. I want to talk about one of my pet peeves today, which is the ECHR. We're going to get into a video later in the segment about question time audiences being dinghy divers and telling us, schooling us on our domestic law and the application in Northern Ireland of the ECHR, which is a farce and it's not actually accurate. So
He had no dignity. The degrading death of Roger Bass. The 90-year-old passed away on a trolley in a crowded hospital corridor after suffering a stroke. It was Roger's family who told nurses he'd stopped breathing.
It rattles my brain, you know, to think my dad died like that.
I would say to West Street, please go down there and see for yourself what it's like.
New figures show a shocking 1 in 5 A&E patients being treated in hallways, offices and even cupboards as the surge in flu cases puts hospitals under ever greater pressure. The grim reality of NHS corridor care. Also tonight. Guilty of murder, the Bradford man who killed a woman and 3 children in a house fire in revenge for a failed relationship. At 7, 4 years after Russia's full-scale invasion and with US support faltering, how European allies are keeping Ukraine afloat. As arms and aid flow in, the injured flow out. We have a special report. Here were Vodafone aware they were damaging franchises. The voicemail message that seems to show they knew only too well. And
Sir Roger Daltrey for services to charity and to music.
Arise, Sir Roger, the Who's frontman, is knighted by Prince William.
It's a great honour for me, but also it's an incredible honour for the Teenage Cancer Trust.
This is the On TV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. He had no dignity. Left on a trolley and surrounded by patients, 90-year-old Roger Bass died in a busy hospital corridor in a death his family described as degrading. Suffering from a suspected stroke, it was left to Roger's children to alert nurses that he'd stopped breathing. Roger's death offers a tragic insight into the shocking state of corridor care in British hospitals as they cope with lack of capacity and record levels of flu. It comes as figures released today show that a staggering 1 in every 5 A&E patients is being treated in hallways, offices and even cupboards. Roger's family told ITV News the government needs to do more. It's our health correspondent, Rebecca Barry.
Happy birthday to you. Just 3 months ago, Roger marked his 90th birthday, surrounded by loved ones.
He had a great sense of humour, absolutely great sense of humour. And that's how I'm going to remember Dad.
But rather than celebrating his long life, his family are now traumatised by his degrading death.
Absolutely disgusting. It's shameful. He had no dignity.
A proud and private man whose 9 decades came to an end in a public, crowded hospital corridor when he was rushed in with a suspected stroke.
The thing that actually shook me was the amount of trolleys in the corridor. I've never seen nothing like it. The nurse actually turned around and said, it's always like this, day and night, every day.
Last week we broadcast this footage. Patients at Queen's Hospital in East London left for days in corridors waiting for a bed on a ward. Just days before this was filmed, Roger lay here as his family watched him take his very last breaths.
I tried to wake him up. I went, Dad, Dad. I was pushing him up, and I said, he's gone, he's dead.
It might have been his final last
Honestly, I do
moments
believe
anyway,
if it hadn't been for me and my sister being here, they wouldn't have, no one, honestly, no one would have known.
The former car salesman from Essex, whose passion was horses, let down, say his family, by the NHS in his final moments.
It rattles my brain, you know, to think my dad died there like that.
It's awful.
It's dreadful. There's no words.
But he's not alone. Today, a study by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine suggests almost 1 in 5 patients are cared for in corridors or waiting rooms.
The reason